So next up, we have another little panel with Wen and Keith Enright, who is the Chief Strategy Officer at Harvey AI. We heard a little bit about the legal and compliance implication of these agents, especially when it comes to identity. So I think it'll be very fascinating to get the thoughts from somebody who is really into this AI cross-legal field, maybe most advanced in the world. They're one of them. So thank you so much, and a big round of applause, everybody.
Awesome to be chatting with you today, Keith.
Great to be here.
Yeah, having spent over a decade at Google as Google's Chief Privacy Officer, what would you say is the single biggest lesson that you learned from that experience that you're, taking into Harvey today?
Oh, wow. There's a lot of lessons. So for folks who don't know, I was at Google for about 14 years. I was the only chief privacy officer they had. I led privacy and consumer protection for Google worldwide. Honestly, the biggest lesson, and it's not really just applicable to Harvey or to AI, although I think it's massively applicable to anybody who's getting into this field right now, is proceed with optimism, but temper it with humility. So when I joined Google, one of the responsibilities I had was to represent Google before regulators and policymakers all over the world. And folks were super skeptical. They didn't understand the technology. Policymakers, regulators, they all wanted to figure out some way to protect their citizens from something that they anticipated was going to be really disruptive to things that they held dear. And we had really struggled because, candidly, there was just a ton of hubris in Silicon Valley generally, and in all the big tech companies. When we went to visit regulators or policymakers, we believed they didn't understand things as well as we did. We thought they were Luddites. We thought that they were not sufficiently optimistic about technology, not sufficiently committed to bringing its benefits to their citizens. So we set ourselves up in this adversarial posture, which just created pain. And it prevented us from bringing technology to market as efficiently and effectively as we could, and it prevented policymakers from creating and enforcing really good policy. And the world suffered as a result of it. So I make that sound worse than it really was because we figured it out. But once we began engaging with policymakers with humility, recognizing they knew things we didn't, and we created a very real and sincere conversation, we avoided a ton of enforcement scrutiny. They didn't try to slow us down or hang us up in the way they had historically. I think all of those lessons are going to be even more important now because AI is going to be vastly more disruptive than anything we've ever seen before, from my view. And it's going to be even more important that we have really open and candid conversations between those of you who really deeply understand the technology and have a vision for how you want it to change the world, and the policymakers on the other side of the table who have a ton of weapons and tools at their disposal to slow you down and prevent you from doing the things that you want to do if they don't understand you or if they think you're moving too quickly or irresponsibly.
Oh, wow. That sounds like, collaboration is a huge part of, being able to design for the world that we live in now. Awesome. So Harvey handles arguably some of the most sensitive data in our industry, attorney-client privilege communications, M&A intelligence, litigation. How do y'all think about ensuring data confidentiality so, enterprises can trust you with their most sensitive data?
So first, we're absolutely not going to get through that in 10 minutes, so I get a panel. But I will say is this. For those of you who have paid attention to Harvey, Harvey's a really interesting company for a whole host of reasons. I'm super excited to be there. The founders, Winston Weinberg and Gabe Pereira. Gabe came from DeepMind at Google. Winston was sort of a relatively short-term new lawyer at O'Melveny. And they were ahead of the curve in being optimistic that many parts of legal practice had features that made them especially amenable to AI automation, streamlining, amplification, and they leaned in really hard. Winston reached out directly to Sam Altman, who got sort of early access to ChatGPT, and they were off to the races. The genius of Winston, I would say, and I would have gone the other way, I think any rational person would have gone the other way in that moment, is when anyone would have said, start with the easy problem and put some points on the board and earn trust and then work your way up to the most impenetrable fortresses of the legal profession, Winston did everything upside down. He went directly to the Amlot 10, to the largest, most elite, most risk-averse organizations on the planet in the legal ecosystem. Nobody rational would have thought that that was the right way to go, or that it was a viable path to success. But he did it. And the way that they did that was sort of very thoughtfully and with humility, engaging with these super senior leaders and explaining to them, Your business is about to be disrupted, and I totally understand you need to be more sensitive to the risks of client confidentiality, of ethical walls. There are so many tripwires and pitfalls in the legal profession if you don't handle them responsibly. So engaging proactively with the people who are actually most concerned and then designing the product to that paradigm, because if you solve the hardest problem, then it's much easier to sort of penetrate the rest of the market really, really efficiently. As Professor Song was saying, like, there are so many unsolved problems in this space, and the risk environment is only getting more complicated by the day. So we need to not only be deeply engaged on the research side of things, understanding how the threat landscape and the security landscape is evolving and emerging technical capabilities. We also serve as the connective tissue between that part of the future and one of the most technically, that's the word I'm looking for here. The legal industry has never been an early adopter of cutting edge technology. They tend to have a ton of technical debt because they can't. Like, law firms as a business model are massively profitable and successful, even if they are not really aggressive in deploying technology. It's one of the things we could talk more about. Like, one of the reasons the legal ecosystem is so interesting right now is because a lot of that's changing. Like, for the first time probably in the history of the practice of law, they need to accept more risk than they have before. They need to adopt technology more deeply and aggressively than they ever have before. And being a really, really trusted partner for those decision makers to take them by the hand and walk them through what has to be one of the scariest, most dangerous, most rapid periods of change that they've ever experienced before. It's an opportunity and it's a privilege.
That's super cool. Yeah, and kind of tying into what Don was speaking about, particularly around accountability in the legal field. I'm curious, as someone with a law background, how are you thinking about responsibility and accountability to the yeah.
So it's everything, right? Even when in my past life, we always said you're kind of one security breach or one mishandling of user data away from having your reputation collapse. Everybody knows it's extremely difficult to earn the trust of users or customers or clients. It's extremely easy to lose it, and once you lose it, it's even more difficult to earn it back. It's a sort of really, really clear thing that everybody understands, but it's also a very, very difficult risk to weigh and then plan into. That couldn't be more true than it is for anybody operating in the legal ecosystem right now. As I had said, we are looking at an industry that is going to have to sort out how artificial intelligence is going to fundamentally reshape the unit economics of the core business of law, the way that law is monetized. When you are trying to help a business navigate that kind of radical disruption, security, confidentiality, privacy, and sort of technical sophistication, that's just table stakes. Like, there will be no forgiveness if there is a significant mistake, and if it is on us, if we aren't handling client data, firm data responsibly, and most importantly, if we're not handling it in the way that we say we are handling it, like, that's the real imperative. You need to make sure with 100% fidelity that you're doing the things you say that you're doing. And that requires a ton of engineering sophistication, and it requires a lot of alignment across all of the different stakeholders in an organization, because where these things go wrong, it is often due to signal loss between your technical talent and your business leadership, your policy leadership, the people that are writing public-facing representations, your marketing teams that are trying to put the best face for your organization in the world, like making sure that everybody has a really, really high quality of signal in their internal conversation is super important to making sure you can keep the promises that you're making.
Yeah, as you're mentioning, alignment is super important, but also, the industry is moving incredibly fast, and there's a real pressure to keep moving faster and faster. And as you also mentioned, there's a lot of unsolved problems in this space as well. What would you say keeps you up at night? And what do you think is still missing?
There's so many ways to answer that question. Like, the most honest answer, what keeps me awake at night, like, I was forcibly AI pilled about a decade ago. Like, my job when I was at Google for much of my tenure there was engaging with policymakers, super, super senior people in governments around the world that had the capacity to shut us down or make our products not available with tremendous economic and social consequence. I needed to meet those people where they lived and explain to them, we are committed to being on the right side of history. I can show you our homework. I can demonstrate for you like how we're doing the things that we say we're doing. And by, as I sort of opened with when we started talking, doing that over and over again and building credibility so that by keeping your promises, by being voluntarily transparent, and by genuinely trying to make the entire conversation smarter, by infusing it with real, accurate information about where technology is taking us, you build trust and credibility with the people on the other side of the table. And if you do all that well, and if democracy works the way that we hope it works, then you get good public policy. Google enjoyed decades of largely self-regulatory policy, which allowed that business and many other businesses around it to flourish in ways that were historically unprecedented. We are now at a moment, everybody in this room knows better than almost anybody else on the planet, AI is about to have these incredibly profound consequences. We know it's probably going to happen faster than it's ever happened before. We know like emergent behaviors in the technology will probably be more surprising, and they're probably going to be harder to digest by policymakers. The thing that keeps me awake more than anything these days, and we see ripples of it, it's sort of dangerous to talk about without getting into a political conversation, but like we end up in a moment where if the technology stumbles and if it hurts people in a way that we probably should have anticipated and maybe didn't communicate about with enough sort of candor and clarity, that could result in reactive bad public policy that won't just be bad for businesses and shareholders and sort of venture capitalists and sort of people in Silicon Valley. It'll be bad for the whole world. Like if we end up being the catalyst for bad public policy that creates a significant backlash and creates legal headwinds to this technology being broadly and optimistically deployed, we might slow down the discovery of a cure for cancer. We might slow down breakthroughs in energy generation or storage technology that exacerbates the climate crisis. Like the opportunity that is right in front of us is so incredible. I'm a non-technologist. The awesome responsibility that I feel right now is using the skills that I've built over the course of my life to protect the technologist. Like, yes, we need to do this responsibly, but we need to do this. And we need to make sure that policymakers and lawmakers around the world are equipped with really good information. We strip away all the hyperbole and we give them real, thoughtful, fact-based information so that we can create policy frameworks and legal frameworks around the world that allow us to do the incredible thing that's like just out of reach right now.
Yeah, I love that. We all have a shared responsibility in this room to, think through security and make sure that we're building the world we want to live in and not, slowing it down. Yeah, awesome. Well, thank you for taking us through, the evolution of, where law and technology has going in this age of AI. Looking ahead at the next year or two at Harvey, where are you most excited about where things are going?
So everybody loves to hate lawyers. like culturally, you track it all the way back to Shakespeare. I think if we actually talk about this sincerely, like I ran away from being a lawyer for my whole career. Like I desperately wanted to be close to technology and the law kept pulling me back in. I now believe unfailingly we need a vibrant and healthy legal profession to support a democracy. And I happen to strongly believe that democracy is the best form of government that's available to us right now. And the way the legal profession has evolved over the last 100 years, the fact that people are so grumpy about it, the fact that there is a sense that client interests are not consistently aligned with law firm interest or with lawyer interest, and the clients aren't getting as much value as they think they deserve, that's a huge problem. So what I'm most excited about, AI is giving us an opportunity to allow law firms themselves to sort of presciently and thoughtfully use this technology to deliver more client value. Like, I don't think law firms should go away. I do think that the unit economics of law firms are ripe for change. And I think clients should be able to be confident that they are getting fair value for the money that they pay to their lawyers, whether they're in-house lawyers or outside counsel. The thing I'm most excited about with Harvey, and we could have a longer conversation about the way that long horizon agents are going to change the way that law is practiced and the way legal services are going to be delivered. But just at a very high level, it has the capability to improve the lives of lawyers, because as many of you may know, like the lives of young lawyers are pretty terrible. Doing doc reviews, sitting in a windowless room, pouring through hundreds of thousands of pages of documents and charging a client $1,000 an hour to do it, like there's a whole bunch of things that are wrong with that. And we are now at a moment that technology is going to help us solve that. But solving that changes the economics of the entire business model in a way that law firms have to be entrepreneurial, and in-house teams, if they're part of that conversation as well, if clients and law firms and us can all collectively work together, everyone can actually win. Like this can actually be a situation that clients get more value, law firms keep generating a really good living, lawyers have a great professional kind of runway ahead of them. We can be a part of that. That's the thing I'm most excited about. And the trajectory of the technology is building my confidence every single day, because we are developing better, more powerful tools to help lawyers give better, faster, more accurate legal advice at a much better price point to clients than they've ever been able to do before.
Awesome. That is super exciting. Well, thank you so much for chatting with me today. Came at the problem with a different angle than Don, but at the end of the day, trust is at the heart of our problems here. Yeah, lovely to chat with you.
Yeah, it's a pleasure. Thanks for having me.